Something felt wrong the moment I stirred awake at 2 in the morning. My bedroom was darker than usual, with only the faint glow from my phone charger casting shadows across the nightstand. I blinked slowly, trying to focus through the grogginess when I noticed it. My black leather purse sat slightly askew, not where I had carefully placed it before bed. The zipper was open just a crack. My heart began hammering against my ribs as I reached for it with trembling fingers. Inside my wallet lay open. The credit card slot was empty. Through my cracked bedroom door, I heard Brooke whispering urgently into her phone about booking a flight immediately. By morning, $21,000 had vanished from my account. I sat at my kitchen table the next morning, laptop open, coffee growing cold as my hands shook too violently to lift the mug. The bank statement glowed on the screen like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Hawaii resort bookings, designer watch purchases, first-class airline tickets to Maui. Each transaction felt like a physical blow to my chest. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I called the fraud department, my voice cracking as I explained the situation to customer service representative Janet Morrison. But what she told me next made my blood turn to ice. "Ma'am, I'm seeing multiple credit applications under your Social Security number from the past week. 3 new credit cards were opened and immediately maxed out. The total fraudulent charges come to $68,000. I dropped the phone. $68,000. My perfect credit score, built carefully over 8 years of responsible financial management, lay in ruins. The credit I had worked so hard to establish for my dream of buying a house was completely destroyed. The front door slammed, and I heard Brooke humming some pop song as she walked in, designer shopping bags rustling in her arms. She looked radiant, practically glowing with satisfaction as she set down multiple bags from expensive boutiques I could never afford. "Morning, Tasha. You're up early. I went for a jog and stopped by a few stores." She smiled brightly, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Brooke." My voice came out flat, emotionless. "We need to talk." Her face immediately crumpled and she burst into tears before I could even finish explaining what I had discovered. She fell to her knees on the kitchen floor, sobbing hysterically. Before I could respond, our father Harold burst through the door without knocking, his face red with anger. But the anger wasn't directed at Brooke. "Tasha Marie, what is this nonsense about pressing charges against your sister? Family doesn't destroy family over money. You need to be the bigger person here and work this out privately." I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, she stole nearly $70,000 from me. She destroyed my credit. She used my identity to commit federal crimes. She made a mistake. People make mistakes. You forgive family." His voice grew stern, the tone he had used when I was a child being scolded for breaking a rule. "Brooke is going through a difficult time with this boyfriend situation. She needs our support, not our judgment." Brooke continued sobbing, clinging to Dad's leg like a small child. "I promise I'll pay it all back. Every penny. Just please don't send me to prison. I can't survive in prison." Looking at them both, I felt a cold realization wash over me. This wasn't the first time Dad had enabled Brooke's destructive behavior, and it wouldn't be the last unless someone finally stood up to both of them. 3 days later, I found myself sitting in Dad's living room for what he called a family meeting to resolve this situation properly. The same living room where Mom used to read us bedtime stories before cancer took her away 5 years ago. Now, it felt like a courtroom where I was somehow the defendant. Brooke arrived 20 minutes late, her eyes puffy and red-rimmed, clutching a box of tissues like a prop. She had clearly been crying for hours, and Dad immediately rushed to her side with the kind of protective concern he had never shown when I struggled through nursing school while working 3 jobs. "Sweetheart, sit down. We're going to fix this together as a family." I watched this performance with growing disgust. Dad, before we start, I think you should know that Brooke didn't just steal from me. The bank found irregularities going back 8 months. This was planned. His face darkened, but not with anger toward Brooke. Tasha, that's enough. Your sister admitted she made a mistake. We don't need to pile on additional accusations. They're not accusations, they're facts. I pulled out the folder I had prepared, spreading bank statements and credit reports across the coffee table. Look at these dates. Look at the pattern. But before Dad could examine the evidence, Brooke began wailing again. I can't take this anymore. My own sister wants to destroy me. Maybe everyone would be better off if I just disappeared forever. The manipulation was so obvious it made me sick, but Dad fell for it completely. He gathered Brooke in his arms, stroking her hair while glaring at me accusingly. Tasha, stop being so cruel. Can't you see how much pain you're causing? That's when Dad dropped the bombshell that changed everything. Besides, this isn't the first time we've dealt with Brooke's financial troubles. I've been helping her for years. She took some money from my retirement account last year to help with her rent. And yes, she borrowed some of your mother's jewelry after the funeral, but she was grieving. People grieve differently. My mouth fell open. She stole Mom's jewelry. She didn't steal it. She needed money for therapy to cope with the loss. I had to refinance the house to cover the difference, but family takes care of family. I felt the room spinning around me. You refinanced the house, Dad. How much money are we talking about? He looked uncomfortable for the first time. The details don't matter. What matters is that we worked it out privately the way families should. And that's what we're going to do now. Actually, the details matter a lot. I stood up, pacing to the window overlooking the backyard where Brooke and I used to play as children. Because if she's been systematically stealing from family for years, this isn't a mistake. It's a pattern of criminal behavior. Before anyone could respond, the front door opened without a knock. Marcus strutted in wearing the expensive watch I had unknowingly purchased for him, his arrogant smirk making my stomach turn. He was tall and lean, with slicked back dark hair and the kind of cocky confidence that screamed trouble. Sorry I'm late, babe. Traffic was insane. He kissed Brooke possessively, then turned to me with mock concern. So you must be the sister causing all the drama. Brooke told me you're thinking about pressing charges over a little family loan. Family loan? I couldn't hide my incredulous tone. She stole $70,000. Marcus shrugged dismissively. Money comes and goes, but family is forever. Besides, you'll get it all back eventually. Brooke and I are getting married and we're expecting a baby. You really want to send your future niece's mother to prison over money. The pregnancy announcement hit Dad like a physical blow. His face lit up with pure joy as he pulled Brooke into another hug. A baby, sweetheart, that's wonderful news, Tasha. You hear that you're going to be an aunt. How can you even think about destroying this family when there's a grandchild on the way? I felt the walls closing in around me. The pregnancy could be real, or it could be another manipulation tactic. With Brooke, it was impossible to tell the difference anymore. But the effect on Dad was immediate and devastating to my position. My phone started buzzing. Cousin Sarah was calling, then Aunt Linda, then Uncle Robert. Brooke had clearly been busy spreading her version of events to the extended family. Each conversation was the same. Family members who barely knew the details lecturing me about forgiveness and unity, about how Mom would have wanted us to stick together, about how pressing charges would tear the family apart forever. By the end of the day, I felt completely isolated and defeated. Everyone I loved was either manipulating me or being manipulated by Brooke. And now there was potentially an innocent child involved. But as I drove home that evening, one thought kept echoing in my mind. If Brooke had been stealing for years, and Dad had been enabling her, how many other victims were there, and how much worse would it get if someone didn't finally stop this cycle? 2 days later, I sat in the sterile conference room of Bradley Walsh and Associates, feeling overwhelmed as attorney Jennifer Walsh spread documents across the mahogany table. Jennifer was a sharp woman in her 40s, with silver-streaked hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who had seen every type of financial crime imaginable. "Tasha, what your sister has done goes far beyond simple credit card theft. This is systematic identity fraud on a federal level." She pointed to a stack of credit applications, each bearing my forged signature. "These date back 8 months. She used your employment information from Regional Medical Center, your salary data, even your direct deposit information to convince creditors she was you." My financial advisor, David Chen, joined the meeting via video call, his expression grim as he reviewed the damage to my credit profile. "The good news is that with proper documentation, we can eventually restore your credit. The bad news is that this process will take years, and the immediate impact on your financial life will be severe." Jennifer nodded solemnly. "Brooke has potentially violated multiple federal statutes: wire fraud, identity theft, credit fraud. We're looking at a minimum of 15 years in federal prison if she's convicted on all charges." 15 years. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Despite everything Brooke had done, the thought of my sister spending 15 years in federal prison made me feel sick. "However," Jennifer continued, "there's something else you need to see." She turned her laptop screen toward me, showing security footage from 3 different bank branches. In each video, a woman who looked remarkably like me was conducting transactions, opening accounts, and applying for credit. "Your sister has been impersonating you for months. Look at the dates on these security feeds." I watched in horror as Brooke, wearing clothes similar to mine and having styled her hair to match my length and color, confidently interacted with bank personnel. She had clearly practiced my mannerisms, my way of speaking, even my nervous habit of tucking hair behind my left ear when concentrating. "This level of premeditation will work strongly in your favor if we proceed with federal charges. But Tasha, you need to understand the scope of what we're dealing with here." David's voice crackled through the video call. "Tasha, there are inquiries on your credit report from auto dealerships, mortgage companies, even student loan servicers. She's been shopping for major loans using your identity." My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then checked the message. My blood ran cold as I listened. "Ms. Davidson, this is Robert Martinez from Capital One Collections. You're currently 90 days past due on your credit card account ending in 4789. If payment isn't received within 24 hours, we'll be forced to proceed with legal action." I had never opened an account with Capital One. Jennifer's expression grew more serious. "Tasha, I need to ask you something difficult. Has anyone from your workplace contacted you about this situation?" My heart sank. "Actually, yes. My supervisor called me into her office yesterday. She said there had been some concerning phone calls about my financial status and that the hospital might need to review my employment if there were issues with financial crimes. That's what I was afraid of. As a nurse, you have access to sensitive patient information and medications. Any hint of financial desperation or criminal behavior could jeopardize not just your current position, but your nursing license permanently." The weight of the situation finally hit me. Brooke hadn't just stolen money. She had potentially destroyed my career, my future, and my ability to ever work in healthcare again. That evening, my boyfriend Ryan came over for dinner, but the conversation was strained and awkward. We had been together for 2 years, and I had hoped we might get engaged soon. But now, sitting across from him at my kitchen table, I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. "Tasha, I love you, but this whole situation is really complicated. I mean, $70,000 in debt plus legal fees, plus the possibility that your family might expect me to help cover the costs of all this." "Ryan, it's not my debt, it's fraud." I know that, but legally speaking, you're still responsible until it's proven in court, and that could take years. I'm just not sure I'm ready for that kind of financial burden. My best friend Sandra arrived just as Ryan was leaving. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a fierce hug. Honey, you need to cut ties with all of them. Your sister, your father, even these extended family members who are pressuring you. This is toxic beyond belief. But cutting ties felt impossible. These were the only family members I had left after Mom died. And if Brooke really was pregnant, walking away meant abandoning my future niece or nephew to grow up in this cycle of manipulation and crime. As I lay awake that night, I realized I was trapped in an impossible situation. Every choice seemed to lead to devastating consequences for someone I loved. But what I didn't know yet was that the worst was still to come. 3 weeks after the family meeting, I was working late at the hospital when I decided to stop by Dad's house to pick up some of Mom's recipe cards I had forgotten there. I still had a key, so I let myself in quietly, not wanting to wake Dad if he was already asleep. But as I tiptoed through the hallway, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Brooke's voice, animated and excited, mixed with Marcus's deeper tone. They were having a conversation that would change everything. The tickets are booked for next Friday. Costa Rica doesn't have an extradition treaty for financial crimes under $100,000, Marcus was saying. Are you sure Tasha won't figure it out before then? Brooke's voice carried a tone I had never heard before. Not scared or remorseful, but calculating and cold. Baby, your sister is so pathetic and weak she can't even press charges when someone steals $70,000 from her. She's not going to figure out anything. They both laughed, and the sound made my blood turn to ice. I still can't believe how easy it was, Brooke continued. 8 months of planning, and she never suspected a thing. Even when I was literally copying her handwriting by practicing with her old birthday cards. What about the pregnancy story? You think your dad believed it? Are you kidding? He's so desperate to have a grandchild, he'd believe anything. There's no pregnancy, obviously, but it's the perfect emotional manipulation to keep everyone focused on protecting me instead of helping Tasha. My legs nearly gave out. I gripped the wall for support, fighting the urge to vomit. And the best part, Brooke went on, is that even if she does try to press charges now, we'll be long gone with all the money converted to crypto and offshore accounts. My contact Carlos has the whole operation set up. We just liquidate everything we bought, convert it to cryptocurrency, and transfer it to accounts she'll never be able to trace. What about your dad? Oh, what about him? He served his purpose. The old fool refinanced his house twice to cover my other mistakes. When we disappear, he'll lose everything, but that's his problem for being so gullible. Marcus laughed cruelly. I love how your whole family just believes whatever sob story you tell them. Even that emotional breakdown you performed at the family meeting. Academy Award worthy. Years of practice, Brooke said smugly. I've been stealing from Tasha since high school. Her birthday money from grandparents' tax refund checks, even money she saved for her nursing school applications. She's always been too trusting and too weak to fight back. The words hit me like physical blows. Years of theft. All those times I thought I had misplaced money or miscounted my savings. The mysterious fees on accounts I had attributed to bank errors. It had all been Brooke. Carlos confirmed the connection to his network in Costa Rica. Once we're there, we can work with his partners to target other families. Your sister's nursing job gave us access to all those patient files with social security numbers and personal information. We should be able to set up dozens of new victims before anyone catches on. That's when everything clicked into place. They weren't just planning to escape with my money. They were planning to use information from my job to victimize my patients. Elderly people, cancer patients, families already struggling with medical bills. I had heard enough. I carefully backed out of the house and sat in my car for 10 minutes, my whole body shaking with rage and determination. For 3 weeks, I had felt powerless, manipulated, and isolated. But now I knew the truth. This wasn't a sister who had made a mistake under pressure. This was a career criminal who had been systematically destroying my life for years, and she was planning to use my career to destroy other innocent families. The next morning, I called the FBI. Special Agent Maria Rodriguez met me at a coffee shop downtown, her demeanor professional but warm. She was a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years bringing down financial criminals. Tasha, what you're describing sounds like a sophisticated identity theft operation. If your sister is connected to a larger network, we're very interested in building a case. What would that involve? We'd need you to gather evidence. Recorded conversations, documentation of their plans, anything that would help us understand the full scope of their operation. She leaned forward, her expression serious. But I need to be completely honest with you. This would mean going undercover, potentially putting yourself in dangerous situations with people who have already shown they're willing to commit federal crimes. They're planning to hurt other families, people I work with, patients I care for. My voice was steady for the first time in weeks. Whatever it takes to stop them. Agent Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Then here's what we're going to do. Over the next hour, she outlined a complex plan that would require me to pretend to be broken and defeated while secretly gathering evidence of their criminal network. It would be dangerous, emotionally exhausting, and there were no guarantees of success. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had some power back. Brooke and Marcus thought I was weak and pathetic. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The plan Agent Rodriguez and I developed was more elaborate than anything I could have imagined. First, we needed to create irresistible bait that would draw out the full extent of Brooke's criminal network. We're going to make them think you've come into a large sum of money, Agent Rodriguez explained as we sat in the FBI field office the following week. Something significant enough that they'll want to access it, but not so obvious that they'll become suspicious. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit created a fake insurance settlement in my name for $200,000, complete with official-looking documentation and a new bank account that appeared to contain the funds. They also coached me on how to act defeated and broken around my family. The key is to make them believe you've given up fighting, Agent Rodriguez said. They need to see you as a victim they can continue to exploit. I started leaving the fake settlement documents around my apartment, knowing Brooke still had a key from years ago when she occasionally house sat for me. I also began acting depressed and hopeless whenever I spoke to Dad or other family members. The transformation in Brooke's behavior was immediate and disgusting. Within days of the documents appearing, she started showing up at my apartment unannounced, being unusually nice, and asking about my emotional state following the terrible misunderstanding between us. "I know you're still upset about the credit card thing," she said during one visit, her voice dripping with fake concern. "But I want you to know I'm getting help. Marcus and I have been talking to a financial counselor." I played my part perfectly, acting defeated and emotionally drained. "I just want this whole nightmare to be over, Brooke. I can't take much more stress." "Of course, sweetie. Family is what matters most. And hey, it looks like that insurance settlement came through. That must be such a relief after everything you've been through." The fact that she knew about the settlement confirmed what we had suspected. She was still monitoring my financial accounts and personal documents. But what happened next exceeded even the FBI's expectations. 3 days later, Brooke arrived at my apartment with Marcus and 2 men I had never seen before. The older man introduced himself as Carlos Martinez, and he had the kind of quiet authority that made my skin crawl. The younger man, Jason Webb, kept looking around my apartment like he was casing it for valuables. Brooke tells me you've come into some money recently. Carlos said, his tone friendly but with an underlying edge that suggested this wasn't really a social call. That's wonderful. Financial windfalls can be life-changing. I was wearing a wire and my hands were shaking as I tried to act natural. It's been helpful, yes. Insurance companies take forever, but they finally settled my mom's medical malpractice case. $200,000 is a significant amount, Jason chimed in. Have you thought about investment opportunities, ways to make that money work for you? Marcus jumped in smoothly. Carlos and Jason have helped a lot of people maximize their financial opportunities. They specialize in fast return investments and international money management. What they were describing was clearly a money laundering operation, and I could see where this was heading. They wanted to use my fake settlement to expand their criminal enterprise. Over the next hour, Carlos outlined what he called wealth optimization strategies that involved converting cash to cryptocurrency international transfers and tax-efficient offshore accounts. It was clearly a pitch to get access to my money so they could steal it and use it to fund larger criminal operations. But the conversation took an even darker turn when Brooke started sharing information I had never told her. Tasha works at Regional Medical Center in the cardiac unit. She has access to patient databases with social security numbers, addresses, insurance information, all kinds of useful data. Carlos's eyes lit up with interest. Healthcare workers are valuable partners in our business model. Patient information can be very helpful for our investment strategies. They weren't even trying to hide what they were really talking about anymore. They wanted to use my job to steal the identities of heart patients, many of whom were elderly and vulnerable. I've already been helping them understand how the hospital's computer systems work. Brooke continued, completely selling out my career and my patients without a second thought. Actually, Carlos said, leaning forward, we're always looking for healthcare professionals who understand the value of financial opportunity. Tasha, would you be interested in joining our investment group? The wire I was wearing felt like it was burning against my skin as I realized the full scope of what they were asking. They wanted me to become an active participant in stealing from my own patients. I don't know. That sounds complicated. It's not complicated at all, Jason assured me. We handle all the technical details. You just provide access and information, and the compensation is very generous, much more than you'd make working for the hospital. Over the next 2 hours, they explained a sophisticated identity theft network that operated across multiple states. Carlos was the leader of an organization that had stolen millions of dollars from hundreds of families. They specialized in targeting healthcare workers, financial services employees, and government workers who had access to personal information. Brooke had already provided them with detailed information about our entire extended family. Dad's social security number, our deceased mother's information, even our cousin's personal details from family gatherings where she had photographed their driver's licenses and documents. Family networks are always the most profitable, Carlos explained casually. People trust family members with their personal information. And if things go wrong, families are less likely to press charges against each other. The cynical calculation behind their strategy made me sick. They had turned family relationships into weapons for financial crime. As the meeting wrapped up, Carlos handed me a business card with only a phone number on it. Think about our offer, Tasha. With your access to patient information and your recent financial windfall, you could be very successful with our organization. After they left, I sat in my apartment for an hour just shaking. The wire had captured everything. Conspiracy to commit identity theft, healthcare fraud, money laundering, and evidence of dozens of previous victims. But I also realized how much danger I was now in. These weren't just opportunistic criminals stealing credit cards. This was an organized network with connections across multiple states and countries, and they now saw me as either a potential partner or a potential threat. Agent Rodriguez was thrilled with the recording when I delivered it the next day. This is exactly what we needed to build a federal case against the entire network. But Tasha, I need you to understand that Carlos Martinez is much more dangerous than your sister. We've been tracking his organization for 2 years. She showed me files on dozens of victims, elderly couples who had lost their life savings, disabled veterans whose benefits had been stolen, even families whose children's college funds had been emptied. We're going to arrange a follow-up meeting where they think you're ready to join their operation. But once we make arrests, these people will know you were working with law enforcement. Are you prepared for that? I thought about all the families whose lives had been destroyed by this network, about my patients who trusted me with their most personal information, about my own family members whose identities Brooke had already stolen and sold. Yes, I'm ready. What I didn't know was that the next phase of the operation would put me face to face with evil in a way I had never imagined. The FBI planned the final sting operation for the following Friday at the Marriott downtown. Carlos had suggested meeting in the hotel's business center to finalize our partnership arrangements and help me optimize my settlement funds. I arrived early wearing a concealed camera in addition to the wire, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Agent Rodriguez and her team were positioned throughout the hotel, but I felt completely alone as I waited in the elegant conference room Carlos had reserved. Brooke arrived first looking more confident and sophisticated than I had ever seen her. She was wearing an expensive dress I had unknowingly purchased for her, and her hair was styled professionally. She looked like a successful businesswoman rather than the crying, desperate sister who had begged for forgiveness just weeks ago. Tasha, you look great. Are you excited about this opportunity? Before I could answer, Marcus walked in with Carlos and 3 other men I hadn't met before. The new arrivals introduced themselves as David Kumar, Alex Thompson, and Robert Chen, all using names that sounded fake to my ears. Excellent, Carlos said, settling into the head of the conference table like he was chairing a legitimate board meeting. Today we're going to show you exactly how our wealth optimization system works. What followed was the most chilling presentation I had ever witnessed. Using a laptop and projector, Carlos walked me through their complete identity theft operation with the casual professionalism of a corporate training session. Our business model is based on 3 primary revenue streams. He began clicking to a slide that showed a flowchart of criminal activities: direct financial account access, credit establishment services, and information brokerage. David Kumar took over the presentation. Let me show you some of our recent success stories. The next slides showed detailed case studies of families they had destroyed. An elderly couple in Arizona whose retirement savings had been completely emptied. A disabled veteran in Ohio whose military benefits had been redirected to fraudulent accounts. A young mother in Tennessee whose children's college funds had vanished overnight. But what made it truly horrifying was how proud they were of their work. They spoke about these victims like they were business achievements, discussing the challenges of accessing different types of accounts and the strategies they used to avoid detection. Healthcare worker partnerships have been our most profitable sector, Alex Thompson explained, nodding approvingly at me. Hospital employees have access to incredibly valuable databases: Social Security numbers, insurance information, family contact details, even medical conditions that can be used for disability fraud. Marcus pulled out a folder thick with documents. Brooke has already provided us with preliminary information from your workplace: patient names, addresses, insurance details. This is exactly the kind of high-value data our clients are looking for. I felt sick realizing that Brooke had somehow accessed patient information from my workstation. She had been in the hospital several times over the past year, visiting me during breaks or bringing me lunch. I had never suspected she was photographing computer screens or stealing patient files. Our international partners are particularly interested in healthcare data, Carlos added. Medical identity theft is extremely profitable because it often takes years for victims to discover the fraud. Robert Chen opened his laptop and showed me a sophisticated software system that looked like a criminal customer relationship management platform. It contained detailed profiles of hundreds of victims organized by categories like elderly targets, healthcare fraud, and family networks. Each victim profile includes their complete financial picture, family relationships, and exploitation history. He explained matter-of-factly. We track everything from initial contact through final asset extraction. Brooke leaned forward excitedly. Show her the family expansion module. That's my specialty. Chen clicked to a section that made my stomach turn. It showed our entire extended family tree with detailed notes about each person's vulnerabilities, financial status, and potential value as targets. Dad was listed as enabler type, high manipulation potential, owns property. Our cousin Sarah was marked as new mother, financially stressed, easy medical fraud target. Even our deceased mother was included with notes about using her social security number for tax fraud. Family networks are self-perpetuating, Brooke explained with disgusting pride. Once you have one family member providing information, you can expand to target their entire extended network. Parents, siblings, children, even family friends who trust the initial contact. Marcus pointed to a map on the wall showing their operations scope. We currently have active operations in 12 states, with over 300 healthcare workers providing regular intelligence updates. And the beautiful part, Carlos said with a cold smile, is that family members almost never press charges against each other. Even when they discover the fraud, they usually try to handle it privately to avoid damaging family relationships. The cynical manipulation of family bonds was breathtaking in its cruelty. These people had weaponized love and trust to destroy innocent families. Now, Tasha, Carlos continued, let's discuss your role in our organization and the compensation structure. He outlined a payment system where I would receive percentages of all money stolen using information I provided. Patient data was worth different amounts depending on the victim's ages and financial status. Elderly patients with significant assets were worth the most. Your settlement money will serve as your initial investment in our operation, David Kumar explained. We'll use it to establish offshore accounts in your name, which will then be used to launder money from other operations. Wait, I said, trying to sound confused rather than horrified. I thought you were just going to help me invest my insurance money. The room went quiet for a moment, and I saw Carlos and Marcus exchange a look. Tasha, Brooke said gently, this is an investment. We're investing in a business opportunity that happens to involve financial services. But some of this sounds illegal. Carlos leaned back in his chair, his friendly demeanor dropping slightly. Tasha, let me be very clear about something. You're already involved in our operation, whether you realize it or not. Your sister has been providing us with information from your workplace for months. Your social security number has been used to establish accounts that are part of our network. You can either be a willing partner who profits from these activities, or you can be an unwilling victim who gets blamed for them. The threat was unmistakable. They had deliberately entangled me in their crimes, so I couldn't back out without facing legal consequences myself. Besides, Marcus added with a cruel smile, who's going to believe that innocent little Tasha didn't know what her own sister was doing? You live together sometimes, you work at the hospital where the information is being stolen. You've already benefited financially from our operations. That's not true. I never benefited from anything. Really? Brooke pulled out her phone and showed me photos of expensive dinners and gifts she had given me over the past year. Where did you think the money for all these came from? I've been sharing my profits from our business ventures with you for months. I realized with growing horror that they had been deliberately creating evidence to make me look like a willing participant. Every gift, every dinner, every small favor had been carefully documented to build a case against me. The beautiful thing about our system, Carlos explained, is that by the time people realize what's happening, they're too implicated to escape. Your fingerprints are on documents your accounts have been used for transfers. Your workplace access has been compromised. Even if you tried to go to the authorities, you'd just be confessing to your own participation in federal crimes. As I sat there listening to them describe how they had trapped me, I realized that my wire was capturing something much bigger than identity theft. This was a confession to systematically destroying hundreds of families while psychologically manipulating their own victims into feeling responsible for the crimes. But what happened next would test every ounce of courage I had left. Agent Rodriguez's voice crackled quietly in my hidden earpiece. FBI is moving in. Keep them talking for 30 more seconds. 30 seconds felt like an eternity as Carlos began outlining the specific patient information he wanted me to steal the following week. Names, addresses, social security numbers, insurance details, and medical conditions of every patient in the cardiac unit. These people are already vulnerable, he said callously. Heart patients often die within a few years anyway, so by the time the identity theft is discovered, many of our victims won't be alive to pursue legal action. The casual cruelty of that statement made my blood boil. These were my patients, people I cared for every day. Families already struggling with serious medical issues who trusted me with their most private information. That's when I heard the most beautiful sound of my life, FBI agents shouting, "Federal agents, everyone stay where you are!" The conference room erupted in chaos. David Kumar tried to run for the balcony. Alex Thompson began frantically deleting files on his laptop, and Robert Chen started shouting about lawyers and warrants. Marcus grabbed Brooke's hand and tried to push past the agents entering through the main door, but Agent Rodriguez was already blocking their path with her weapon drawn. Marcus Webb Brooke Davidson, Carlos Martinez, you're all under arrest for conspiracy to commit identity theft, wire fraud, and racketeering. Brooke immediately began screaming that she was innocent, that she had been forced to participate, that everything was Marcus's idea. The same manipulation tactics she had used on our family, but this time directed at federal agents who had heard every word of her proud confessions on tape. Carlos remained calm even as handcuffs were placed on his wrists. "This is a mistake, agents. We're legitimate financial consultants. Whatever you think you've heard was taken out of context." "Mr. Martinez," Agent Rodriguez replied coolly, "we have you on tape describing in detail how you steal money from heart patients and disabled veterans. There's no context that makes that legal." As they were being led away, Brooke looked at me with pure hatred for the first time in our lives. "You set us up, you lying, backstabbing witch. I'm your sister." "No," I said quietly, standing up from the conference table where I had just witnessed the most evil presentation of my life. "A sister doesn't steal from heart patients. A sister doesn't destroy elderly couples' retirement funds. A sister doesn't manipulate family relationships to commit federal crimes." The last thing I saw was Marcus trying to bargain with Agent Rodriguez, offering to provide information about other criminal networks in exchange for reduced charges. But for me, the nightmare was finally over, and the justice was just beginning. 6 months later, I stood in the federal courthouse wearing my best dress, watching as Judge Patricia Williams prepared to hand down sentences that would determine the rest of these criminals' lives. The courtroom was packed with victims and their families' law enforcement officers and reporters covering what had become one of the largest identity theft cases in state history. Agent Rodriguez sat in the front row, having become something of a mentor and friend throughout the investigation and trial process. She had helped me understand that what I had done required tremendous courage and that hundreds of families would be spared from financial ruin because of the evidence I had gathered. Carlos Martinez was called first. He stood before the judge showing no remorse whatsoever, his expensive lawyer arguing for leniency based on his cooperation with ongoing investigations into other criminal networks. Judge Williams was having none of it. Mr. Martinez, in my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely encountered such callous disregard for human suffering. Your organization deliberately targeted the most vulnerable members of society. Elderly couples who trusted you with their life savings, disabled veterans who deserved protection, not exploitation, heart patients whose medical conditions you planned to use against them. She paused, looking directly at Carlos with undisguised disgust. Your network stole over $4.2 million from more than 300 families across 12 states. But beyond the financial damage, you have destroyed people's faith in institutions, in healthcare systems, and in family relationships. The emotional trauma you have caused is incalculable. Carlos Martinez was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Marcus Webb was next. His attorney argued that he was merely following Carlos's instructions and that his relationship with Brooke had made him vulnerable to manipulation. Mr. Webb. Judge Williams said, "The evidence shows that you were instrumental in recruiting new victims and expanding this criminal enterprise. Your role in planning to flee the country demonstrates premeditation and a complete lack of remorse. You are sentenced to 18 years in federal prison." Then it was Brooke's turn. My sister stood before the judge looking small and defeated, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of the expensive clothes I had unknowingly purchased for her. Her attorney had negotiated a plea deal in exchange for her cooperation, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Ms. Davidson. Judge Williams began, "This case is particularly troubling because it involves the betrayal of family relationships that should have been sacred. You systematically stole from your own sister for years, destroying her financial stability and potentially her career. You provided her workplace with false information about her character, jeopardizing her nursing license." I felt Dad's hand squeeze mine. He had finally understood the full scope of what Brooke had done, and the shame was written across his face. "Furthermore, you used your family relationships to expand your criminal activities to target extended relatives and family friends. You weaponized love and trust to commit federal crimes." Brooke's attorney stood up. "Your Honor, my client was in an abusive relationship with Mr. Webb. She was coerced into participating in activities she didn't fully understand." Judge Williams looked skeptical. "Counselor, I've reviewed the recordings from the undercover operation. Your client demonstrated detailed knowledge of the criminal enterprise and expressed pride in her role in victimizing vulnerable populations. She specifically targeted heart patients knowing they might die before the identity theft was discovered. Ms. Davidson, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will also be required to pay full restitution to all victims identified in this case." As the bailiff led Brooke away, she looked back at me one final time. But instead of the hatred I had seen in the hotel conference room, her expression was something closer to resignation and perhaps a hint of genuine remorse. The other network members received sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years depending on their roles in the organization. After the sentencing hearing, Dad and I walked to his car in silence. The weight of everything that had happened over the past year felt overwhelming. Tasha, he said finally, I owe you an apology that's about 20 years overdue. I looked at him, seeing an old man who had finally recognized the consequences of his enabling behavior. I knew Brooke had problems. I knew she was manipulative and dishonest. But I thought that if I just kept protecting her, kept covering for her mistakes, eventually she would grow out of it. His voice cracked with emotion. Instead, I enabled her to become a career criminal who hurt hundreds of innocent families. Dad, you were trying to be a good father. No, I was being a weak father. A good father would have insisted she face consequences for her actions years ago. A good father would have protected you from her manipulation instead of pressuring you to enable it too. We stood by his car as he continued. I've been going to therapy for codependency. Dr. Stevens has helped me understand that my behavior wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of conflict, fear of being seen as a bad parent, fear of facing the truth about what Brooke had become. What will you do now? I'm selling the house. Too many bad memories, and I need to downsize anyway. I'm moving to a senior community where I can start fresh and maybe learn how to have healthier relationships. He smiled sadly. And I'm going to spend whatever years I have left trying to make up for the damage I've done. 3 months later, I received a letter from Brooke in federal prison. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me curious about what she might have to say. The letter was different from anything she had ever written to me. No manipulation, no excuses, no attempts to make me feel guilty. Just a straightforward acknowledgement of what she had done and a genuine apology for the years of lies and theft. Tasha, she wrote, I know that sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I finally understand what I did to you and to all those families we hurt. Prison has given me time to think clearly for the first time in my adult life, without drugs, without Marcus, without the constant pressure to maintain lies. She went on to explain that she had enrolled in accounting and business ethics courses, hoping to develop legitimate skills for when she was eventually released. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. I know I destroyed your trust and hurt people who didn't deserve it. But I want you to know that the sister who stole from you and lied to you was not the person I want to be. I'm going to spend the next 12 years trying to become someone worthy of the family name again. The letter ended with something that surprised me. I'm proud of you for being brave enough to stop me. If you hadn't, I would have kept hurting people forever. You saved those families, and in a way, you saved me too. As I read those words, I realized that some part of me still loved my sister. Not the criminal who had manipulated and stolen from our family, but the little girl who used to braid my hair and share secrets with me late at night. Meanwhile, my own life was finally moving forward in positive directions. The FBI recovered most of the stolen money through asset forfeiture, and my credit was completely restored. The hospital not only kept me on staff, but promoted me to charge nurse in recognition of the courage I had shown in protecting our patients. My relationship with Ryan grew stronger through the crisis. He proposed at a family dinner 6 months after the sentencing, saying that watching me handle such a difficult situation with grace and determination had convinced him I was the kind of person he wanted to face life's challenges with. You could have taken the easy path, he said as he got down on one knee in Dad's new apartment. You could have just accepted the theft and moved on. But you chose to protect other people even when it was dangerous and difficult. That's the kind of character I want in a wife. Dad cried during the proposal, later telling me it was the first time in years he had been truly proud of our family. The extended family members who had pressured me to forgive Brooke also reached out with apologies. Cousin Sarah sent a long email explaining that she had only heard Brooke's version of events and never understood the criminal scope of what was happening. We all thought it was just a family financial dispute, she wrote. We had no idea about the network, the other victims, or the systematic nature of the fraud. Thank you for protecting all of us from becoming victims too. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from the families whose financial lives had been saved by the investigation. Agent Rodriguez arranged for me to meet some of them at a victim advocacy event. Eleanor Patterson was an 82-year-old widow whose late husband's pension had been targeted by the network. Because of our investigation, the theft was stopped before her account was accessed. "Dear, you saved my home," she said, holding my hands with tears in her eyes. "Without that pension, I would have lost everything. You protected a stranger you'll never see again. That takes a special kind of heart." James Miller was a disabled veteran whose benefits had been partially stolen before the network was shut down. "My kids' college funds were next on their list," he told me. "You probably saved my family's entire future." Meeting these families helped me understand that my decision to work with the FBI had been about much more than just stopping Brooke. It had been about protecting innocent people from predators who saw family relationships as tools for financial crime. A year after the sentencing, I started a foundation called Family Financial Safety to help identity theft victims navigate the recovery process and rebuild their credit. Agent Rodriguez joined the board of directors, bringing her expertise in financial crimes investigation. "You know," she told me at our first board meeting, "in my 15 years with the Bureau, I've seen a lot of people in your situation choose to just walk away and try to rebuild privately. You chose to fight not just for yourself, but for people you'd never met. That's rare." The foundation has helped over 200 families so far, providing legal resources, financial counseling, and emotional support to people whose lives have been shattered by identity theft. We work particularly closely with healthcare workers and elderly victims, the populations most targeted by criminal networks like Carlos's. This past Christmas, Dad hosted dinner at his new apartment for Ryan and me. As we sat around his small table sharing stories and laughing together, I reflected on how much our family had changed. "You know what I've learned this year?" Dad said as we finished dessert. "Real love sometimes means letting people face consequences for their actions. I spent years thinking I was protecting Brooke, but I was actually preventing her from growing up and becoming a better person." "Do you think she can change?" I asked. "I hope so. But whether she does or not, I know that you changed all of us by refusing to enable the cycle anymore. You saved our family by being willing to risk losing it." As I drove home that evening with Ryan, I thought about everything that had happened since that night. I woke up to find my credit card missing. The discovery of the theft had felt like the worst thing that could happen to my family. But in reality, it had been the beginning of the healing process we all desperately needed. Today, I work with victims who are going through the same nightmare I experienced. And I always tell them the same thing. Agent Rodriguez told me, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to refuse to let them destroy themselves and others. It's been 2 years since Brooke's sentencing, and I still think about her every day. I hope she's using her time in prison to become the person she wrote about in her letter. I hope she's learning to build something positive instead of tearing down everything she touches. But regardless of what happens with Brooke, I know that I made the right choice. I chose to protect innocent families over protecting a guilty sister. I chose accountability over enabling. I chose justice over false peace. And in making those difficult choices, I discovered something about myself that I never knew before. I'm stronger than I thought, braver than I believed, and more committed to doing the right thing than I ever imagined. The most important lesson I've learned through this whole experience is that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's fear disguised as compassion. Real love sometimes requires us to make difficult decisions that feel painful in the moment, but protect everyone involved in the long run. When we enable destructive behavior in the people we love, we're not helping them. We're helping them destroy themselves and everyone around them. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to stop being part of the problem and start being part of the solution. If you've ever been in a situation where someone you love is manipulating and hurting others, I want you to know that it's okay to choose protection over enabling. It's okay to choose justice over false peace. It's okay to love someone and still hold them accountable for their actions. Family bonds are precious, but they're not more important than protecting innocent people from harm. And sometimes the only way to truly help someone you love is to let them face the consequences of their choices. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between loyalty to family and doing what's right? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more real-life stories, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you find the courage to make whatever difficult decisions you're facing in your own life.